The air on the planet Viridia was heavy and hard to breathe. It smelled like smoke and something sharp, like electricity after a storm. From the high window of his big spaceship, General Tavek looked down at the world below. His ship was called the Judgment of Cathar, and it was the leader of the whole invasion fleet. The cities down there were not cities anymore. They were black and gray shapes, broken and burning. Fires dotted the land like ugly flowers. General Tavek watched this and he felt satisfied. This was the result of strength. This was order. The general was not a man. He was a Cathar. His body was covered in hard, dark plates like a beetle. He stood very tall and straight. His face had no soft skin to show his feelings. It was all sharp angles and dark, shiny eyes that did not blink. When he spoke, his voice was a low sound like rocks grinding together. He turned to the other Cathar officers on the command deck. They stood perfectly still, waiting for his words. "The fight for this world is over," General Tavek said. "The humans have lost. Our reports are complete. Our observations are clear." He walked slowly in front of them. His heavy steps made a solid sound on the metal floor. "The humans are weak," he stated. It was not an opinion. It was a fact, like saying water is wet. Their bodies are soft. They have no shells to protect them. A single claw can tear them open. Their bones break easily. Their senses are dull. They cannot see in the dark. They cannot hear the low hum of our engines until it is too late. He stopped and looked at each of his officers. But their greatest weakness is not in their bodies. It is in their minds. They are ruled by sentiment. They feel things that make no sense. They have words like mercy and compassion. They value the life of one single person over the good of the whole group. On a large screen behind him, a video played. It showed a group of human soldiers. One of them was hurt and could not walk. Instead of leaving him behind, 2 other soldiers stayed. They tried to carry him. They moved slowly. Because of this, they were all found and killed by a Cathar patrol, see? Said General Tavek. They hesitate. They look back. This attachment to the individual is a flaw. It is a sickness. It makes them slow. It makes them predictable. It makes them weak. This is why their worlds fall to us. The strong conquer. The weak are conquered. This is the only true law in the universe. He pointed a sharp finger at the burning planet below. What you see down there is not a tragedy. It is a lesson. It is the result of their weakness. Remember this lesson. It is what makes the Cathar Empire great. The officers all made a low clicking sound of agreement. They understood. Strength was everything. Down on the surface, the world was noise and chaos. Jin moved carefully through the broken pieces of a building. Dust and ash covered his uniform. His face was smeared with dirt and sweat. He held his rifle tightly, his eyes constantly moving, looking for any sign of danger. Next to him was Su Min. She was a medic. She carried a pack full of bandages and medicine instead of extra bullets. Her face was tired, but her eyes were sharp and watchful. Their unit had been caught in the last big attack from the sky. The Cathar ships had fired from orbit, and there was no hiding from that. Many of their friends were gone in an instant. Now Jin and Su Min were alone. They were part of what was left, trying to find other survivors and avoid the Cathar patrols that were now cleaning up the city. "Do you think anyone else is out here?" Su Min whispered. Her voice was hoarse from the smoke. "Maybe," Jin said quietly, "but we need to be quiet. Sound travels far in all this ruin." They climbed over a large concrete block. Before the war, this had been a street with shops and houses. Now it was just a graveyard of broken things. The air was full of the sound of crackling fires and the distant, scary buzz of Cathar drones. They reached the entrance to an old transit tunnel. The entrance was partly collapsed. It was dark inside, a cave of shadows. "We should check it," Jin said. "It might be a good place to hide for a while, rest." Su Min nodded. She took a small light from her belt and shone it into the darkness. The beam cut through the black, showing a path littered with rubble. They moved inside, step by careful step. The world outside became quiet. The only sounds were their own breathing and the crunch of their boots on broken stone. They had gone about 50 steps when Su Min stopped suddenly. She held up a closed fist. Jin froze instantly, raising his rifle. "What is it?" He breathed. "Listen," she whispered. At first, Jin heard nothing. Then he heard it. A soft clicking sound. It was a rhythm of pain. Click, click, whine. Click, it was not a human sound. "It's one of them," Jin said, his voice hard. "A Cathar." He moved in front of Sumin, his rifle pointed into the darkness toward the sound. They moved forward again, more slowly now. The tunnel curved. Around the bend they saw it. A Cathar soldier was trapped. A heavy piece of metal machinery, maybe part of a train, had fallen from the ceiling and pinned the alien to the ground. It was lying on its side. One of its 4 legs was completely crushed under the weight. Its dark shell-like armor was cracked there, and a sticky greenish fluid seeped out onto the ground. Its weapon was nowhere to be seen. It was smaller than the others they had seen. Its claws looked less sharp. It was young, Jin realized. Probably very young. The Cathar saw them. Its multifaceted eyes reflected the beam of Sumin's light. It tried to push itself up, a weak hissing click coming from its mouth. It was scared. It was in pain. It was helpless. Jin's training took over. His finger found the trigger on his rifle. The procedure was simple. The enemy was a threat. Eliminate the threat. This was a clean, easy shot. This was what you did in a war. He aimed right between the creature's eyes. "Wait," Sumin said. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the tension like a knife. Jin did not look away from his target. "Wait for what, Sumin? It's the enemy." "Look at it, Jin," she said, stepping closer. "It's just a kid. It's trapped. It's not going to hurt anyone." "That doesn't matter," Jin said, his voice tight. "If its squad comes back and finds us here, we are dead. This is a liability. We need to move. And if we just leave it here?" Sumin asked. "It will die slowly, in pain and alone. That's not our problem," Jin said. "It's a soldier. This is war, is it?" Sumin looked from the wounded alien back to Jin. Her eyes were serious. "They think we're weak, Jin. They think we're animals because we feel things. Are we going to prove them right? By killing a hurt, helpless thing?" Jin finally glanced at her. He saw the look on her face. It was the same look she had when she was trying to save a wounded human soldier. A fierce, stubborn determination. A refusal to give up. She wasn't just seeing an enemy. She was seeing a living thing that was suffering. He looked back at the young Cathar. It had stopped struggling. It just watched them, its body trembling slightly. It was waiting for the end. Jin's finger stayed on the trigger. It would be so easy. One small movement. It would be safe. It would be what his training told him to do. But then he thought about what they were fighting for. It wasn't just for land or for victory. It was for their home. It was for the idea that life had value, that you helped people who were hurt, that you showed mercy, even when it was hard. If they gave that up now, what was the point? What were they even protecting? With a long, frustrated sigh, Jin lowered his rifle. The barrel pointed at the ground. "This is a bad idea," he muttered. "This is going to get us killed." But Sumin was already moving. She slung her medkit off her shoulder and knelt on the ground a few feet from the wounded alien. "I'm not going to let them turn us into monsters," she said, without looking back at him. "That's a victory they don't get to have." Jin shook his head but didn't argue. He turned his back to her and the trapped Cathar. He positioned himself so he could watch the tunnel entrance. He raised his rifle again, this time to guard them. He was protecting his friend, and now, unbelievably, he was also protecting their enemy. High above, on the quiet command deck of the Judgment of Cathar, General Tavek was reviewing the data feeds from the ground. Small drones flew over the ruined city, sending back pictures and videos. Most of it was boring, a few last human fighters being found and removed, his own patrols moving through the streets. It was all going according to plan. Then one feed made him pause. It was from a drone flying near a collapsed transit tunnel. The heat signatures showed 3 life forms inside. 2 were human. 1 was Cathar. He zoomed in with the drone's camera. The image was sharp. He saw one human soldier standing guard facing the entrance. He saw another human kneeling on the ground. And he saw the wounded Cathar soldier trapped under the machinery. At first, General Tavek thought it was an interrogation. Perhaps the humans were trying to get information. That would be a logical, if desperate, action. But as he watched, he saw the kneeling human open a pack. It took out not tools for torture, but bandages and a container of liquid. The human carefully began to clean the broken part of the Cathar's shell. It was gentle. It was careful. It was medical care. The human standing guard was not watching the prisoner. He was protecting them both. General Tavek felt a strange feeling. It was confusion. This made no sense. The human was using its own valuable medical supplies. It was wasting its time. It was risking its own life. For what? For an enemy. For a soldier who had already failed, this was not strength. This was the worst kind of weakness. It was sentiment. It was the very sickness he had just warned his officers about. He watched for a minute longer, his cold, dark eyes fixed on the screen. The human medic worked with a calm focus. The human guard stood his post unwavering. A small, cold doubt began to form in the general's mind. It was just a tiny crack, but it was there. Why would they do this? What kind of species fought a war like this? He did not have an answer. And for a general who believed he knew everything about strength and weakness, that was a very troubling thing. The silence in the tunnel was heavy. It was a thick, uncomfortable quiet, broken only by the soft, pained clicks from the trapped Cathar and the sound of Su-Min opening her med kit. Jin kept his back to them. His entire body was tense. His ears strained to hear any sound from the tunnel entrance, the scuff of a boot, the low hum of a Cathar energy weapon. Every second felt like an hour. He was sure a patrol would find them. This act of mercy felt like a death sentence. Su-Min did not look at Jin. She knew he was angry and scared. She was scared too. But she looked at the alien on the ground. Up close, it looked even younger. Its dark carapace was not as thick or scarred as the others she had seen. Its forearms were slender. The two main arms ended in sharp claws, but they were held close to its body, trembling. It watched her with its many-faceted eyes. She saw her own tiny reflection in each one. She saw fear there. "Okay," she said softly, more to herself than to the creature. "Let me see." She moved slowly, showing it the roll of bandage in her hand. She did not want to startle it. The Cathar let out a low hiss and tried to pull away, but it was pinned fast. The movement made it click in sharp pain. "Shh," Su-Min said, the way she would to a frightened child. "I'm just going to try and help." She looked at the metal beam pinning its leg. It was far too heavy for her and Jin to move. She couldn't free it, but she could maybe treat the wound, stop the bleeding. The green fluid was still slowly leaking out from the cracked shell. She took out a water canteen and a clean cloth. She poured a little water onto the cloth. The Cathar flinched at the sound. "I need to clean it," she explained, her voice calm and steady. "It will feel cold." She reached out. The alien stiffened, its eyes fixed on her hand. Very gently, she began to wipe away the green fluid from the broken carapace. The creature made a surprised click. It was not a sound of pain. It was a sound of confusion. Jin risked a glance over his shoulder. He saw Su-Min cleaning the alien's wound. He saw the creature watching her, not fighting, just watching. It was the strangest thing he had ever seen. "Anything?" Jin whispered, turning his eyes back to the entrance. "Nothing," Su-Min whispered back. "It's stable for now, but I can't get it free." "We can't stay here, Su-Min," Jin said. His voice was low and urgent. "The sun will be down soon. It gets cold, and the patrols will be more active." "I know," she said. She finished cleaning the wound as best she could. She took a thick pad of gauze from her kit and pressed it against the crack in the shell, trying to slow the seepage. She didn't have any tape that would stick to the hard carapace, so she used a long bandage wrap, carefully looping it around the joint to hold the pad in place. The Cathar remained still. It seemed to understand she was not hurting it. Its clicking became softer, less frantic. "What do we call it?" Su-Min asked quietly. "Call it?" Jin said, his voice tense. "We don't call it anything. It's the enemy. We can't just call it it," Su-Min replied. She looked at the alien. Its eyes were still on her. "It's a he or a she, isn't it?" "A person." Before Jin could answer, the Cathar made a soft sound. It was a series of clicks different from the ones of pain. It was slower. It tapped one of its smaller claws against its own chest. "Key," it clicked. "Kitak," Su-Min looked at it surprised. It was trying to communicate. "Kitak," she repeated slowly. The alien Kitak made a softer click, almost a hum. It seemed to be a sound of confirmation. "Okay," Su-Min said. "I'm Su-Min," she pointed to herself. Then she pointed to Jin, who was still standing guard. "That is Jin." Kitak looked from her to Jin's back. It did not speak again, but it seemed a little less tense. Jin listened to this exchange. His mind was racing. This was getting more complicated by the minute. Naming the enemy, talking to it. It made it harder to think of it as just a target. He shook his head, trying to clear it. He had to stay focused on survival. On the command deck, General Tavek could not look away from the drone feed. He had ordered the drone to hold its position. hidden high above the tunnel entrance. He watched the scene below with a growing sense of disbelief. The human, Su-min, was now speaking to the wounded soldier. The young Cathar, whom the general now recognized as a low-level infantry recruit from the records, was responding. It was giving them its name. This was worse than he thought. This was not just a momentary lapse. This was a sustained act of fellowship. It was contamination. The human's weakness was spreading to his own soldier, making it forget its place. A Cathar warrior should die in battle, not accept aid from the enemy. It was a disgrace. He watched the human guard, Jin. The man was clearly alert, his posture rigid with stress. He was performing his duty perfectly, despite the illogical actions of his companion. There was a discipline there, but it was being wasted on a foolish mission. One of his officers approached. "General, the planetary pacification is at 98%. Shall I send the next wave of patrols to the northern sectors?" General Tavek did not take his eyes off the screen. "No," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Hold the patrols. I have a different task." He pointed a sharp claw at the image on the screen. "Dispatch a single patrol to these coordinates. A small one. 3 soldiers." The officer looked at the screen. He saw the humans and the trapped Cathar. "To eliminate the humans, General?" General Tavek was silent for a long moment. He was not sure what he wanted. Part of him wanted to see this strange situation crushed, to have his view of the universe restored. But another smaller part was deeply curious. "To observe," the general finally said, "and to test. I want to see what they do. The patrol will approach. They will see their comrade. They will see the humans protecting it. I want to see the humans' reaction, and I want to see the patrol's reaction. Do you understand?" The officer clicked his understanding. "A test of their resolve." "And ours?" "Exactly," Tavek said. "Now go." Back in the tunnel, the light was beginning to fade. The sun was setting outside, and long, dark shadows stretched across the rubble. Jin's muscles were aching from standing so still for so long. "Su-min," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We have to make a decision. We can't stay here all night." Su-min looked at Kitak. The young Cathar seemed a little better. The bandage was holding. Its breathing, a series of soft clicks and hisses, was more regular. "We can't leave him," she said simply. "We can't take him with us," Jin argued. "He can't walk, and even if he could, where would we go? We have no base, no transport." "Then we stay until morning," Su-min said. "We take turns watching." "It's too dangerous," Jin insisted. He finally turned to face her. His face was grim in the dim light. "This isn't a game, Su-min. This is how we die." "For nothing." "Is it for nothing?" she asked, looking him straight in the eye. "What are we, Jin? If we become just like them, killing anything that's different, then what was the point of any of this? We might as well have lost already." Before Jin could answer, a sound froze the words in his throat. It was a sound he knew well, the low rhythmic thumping of Cathar footfalls, not the slow, pained steps of a wounded creature. These were the confident marching steps of a patrol. They were here. Jin's eyes widened. He swung his rifle back towards the tunnel entrance. "Contact!" he hissed. Su-min scrambled to her feet, her heart hammering. She stood between Kitak and the entrance. Kitak heard the footsteps too. It let out a fearful, high-pitched click and tried to push itself up again, a hopeless effort. The footsteps came closer. 3 figures appeared at the entrance to the tunnel bend, silhouetted against the last bit of fading light. They were full-grown Cathar warriors, their armor thick and scarred. They carried heavy plasma rifles. The lead soldier saw Jin first. Its weapon came up instantly. Then its eyes moved past him. It saw Su-min. And then it saw Kitak, trapped on the ground, with a human bandage wrapped around its leg. The lead soldier stopped. It did not fire. It made a series of sharp, questioning clicks to its 2 companions. They also lowered their weapons slightly. They were confused. The scene made no sense to them. 2 humans, one of their own, wounded. The humans were not using it as a hostage. They were not attacking. The female human was standing in front of the wounded one as if to protect it. The male human was aiming his weapon at them, but he was not shooting. The lead Cathar took a step forward. It gestured with its claw towards Kitak. It was a clear, universal gesture. "Step aside. Give him to us." Jin tightened his grip on his rifle. His finger rested on the trigger. This was it. This was the end. He would take at least one of them with him. But then, he saw Sumin. She didn't move. She shook her head slowly. Her hands held out to her sides, showing she had no weapon. "No," she said, her voice clear and firm in the tense silence. The Cathar soldier tilted its head. It was clearly surprised. It repeated the gesture, more aggressively this time. Sumin stood her ground. "You can't have him," she said, as if the alien could understand her words. "He's hurt." Jin could not believe what was happening. He was in a standoff with a Cathar patrol over the life of a Cathar soldier. It was insane. The lead Cathar looked from Sumin's defiant face to Jin's ready rifle. It then looked down at Kitak, who was watching the exchange with wide, frightened eyes. The soldier seemed to be processing the situation. Its orders were to observe and test. This was the test. It could easily kill the two humans, but that was not what its general wanted to know. The general wanted to know why they were doing this. The Cathar soldier stood there for a long moment, its weapon half raised. The only sound was the ragged breathing of the humans and the soft, scared clicks from Kitak. Then something incredible happened. The lead Cathar soldier took a step back. It made a low, grumbling click to its team. It did not sound angry. It sounded thoughtful. Without another gesture, the three Cathar soldiers turned around. Their heavy footsteps echoed in the tunnel as they walked away, leaving the two humans and the wounded Cathar alone in the growing dark. Jin stood frozen, his rifle still aimed at the empty space where the patrol had been. He could not process what had just happened. They left, he stammered, lowering his weapon slowly. Why did they leave? Sumin let out a shaky breath and leaned against the tunnel wall, her legs feeling weak. She didn't have an answer. On the command deck, General Tavek watched the patrol retreat. He had seen the human Sumin refuse to move. He had seen the human Jin, ready to fight a hopeless battle to protect his friend and their enemy. He had seen the confusion in his own soldiers. The general turned away from the screen. The city was conquered. The planet was his. But he felt a cold knot in his stomach. He had just witnessed a strength he could not define. A strength that made his own soldiers hesitate. A strength that came not from a weapon, but from a stubborn, illogical, and terrifying will to protect. For the first time in his long life, General Tavek felt a flicker of fear. The silence after the patrol left was deeper and more profound than before. It was a heavy blanket that smothered the tunnel. Jin stood completely still, his ears ringing in the quiet, his rifle pointed at nothing. He could not believe they were still alive. Sumin slid down the wall until she was sitting on the ground. She put her head in her hands and took several long, shaky breaths. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her feeling weak and hollow. Kitak let out a soft, questioning click. It had been sure it was about to die. It had seen its own kind, and they had not helped. They had just left. It was confused and scared. Jin finally lowered his rifle. His arms ached. He turned slowly and looked at Sumin, then at Kitak. "What just happened?" he asked. His voice was hoarse. "I don't know," Sumin whispered. "They saw he was hurt. They saw we were helping. Maybe. Maybe they understood." "Understood what?" Jin's voice rose slightly. "That we're crazy? That we'd die for one of their own recruits? They think we're weak, Sumin. This just proves it to them." He gestured wildly at the empty tunnel. "This was a fluke. They'll be back with more soldiers. They were probably just reporting our position." "Then why didn't they just kill us?" Sumin asked, looking up at him. Her face was pale in the dim light. "It would have been easy for them. 3 against 2. They had the advantage, but they didn't fire. They just left." Jin had no answer for that. It was the part that made no sense. The Cathar were not known for mercy. They were known for efficiency. Killing them would have been the efficient thing to do. He walked over to the tunnel wall and slumped down against it a few feet from Sumin. The fatigue hit him all at once. He was tired, hungry, and more confused than he had ever been in his life. "We can't stay here," he said. But the words lacked their earlier force. "We have to for now," Sumin said. "It's dark outside. It's not safe to move. We'll take turns sleeping. You first. You look like you're about to fall over." Jin wanted to argue, but he was too tired. He just nodded, his head leaning back against the cold concrete. He closed his eyes, but he knew sleep would not come easily. His mind was racing, going over every second of the standoff. Sumin moved to sit closer to Kitak. The young Cathar watched her. Its fear seemed to have lessened a little. It made a soft click, then gestured with its smaller claw towards the bandage on its leg. "It's okay," Sumin said softly. "They're gone." Kitak tapped its own chest. "Kitak," it clicked. Then it pointed a claw at her. "Sumin," she said again, pointing to herself. It then pointed its claw towards Jin, who was pretending to sleep. "Jin," Sumin said. Kitak was silent for a moment, processing. Then it made a new sound, a combination of clicks. It pointed at Sumin. "Min." It pointed at Jin. "Jin." Its language was hard for her mouth to form, but it was trying. Sumin felt a strange pang in her heart. This was a person, a young, scared person, just like the new soldiers in her own unit. It wasn't a monster. It was a long way from home, hurt and alone. She took a small piece of nutrient bar from her pocket. It was the last of her food. She broke it in half. She ate one piece slowly. Then she held out the other half to Kitak. The Cathar looked at the offering. It hesitated. Its diet was different, but it seemed to understand the gesture. It reached out with its smaller, more delicate claw and took the piece of bar. It brought it to a part of its face that must have been a mouth hidden under a plate. There was a soft crunching sound. It made a low, humming click. It was a sound of appreciation. Sumin smiled faintly. "You're welcome." On the command deck, General Tavek was restless. He had dismissed his officers for the night cycle, but he remained staring at the now dark video feed from the tunnel. The drone could no longer see inside, but its heat sensors showed 3 life signs, all close together, all still. The image of the human female standing protectively in front of the wounded Kitak was burned into his mind. The human male, ready to fight a battle he could not win. The confusion of his own patrol. He called up the file on Recruit Kitak. It was indeed young. Its first deployment, its performance reviews were average. It was nothing special, expendable. Yet 2 humans had chosen to risk everything for it. He thought about the Cathar way. When a soldier was too wounded to fight, they were left behind. Their bodies were recycled for materials. It was practical. It was efficient. It strengthened the whole by removing the weak. Sentiment for the individual was a luxury a mighty empire could not afford. So why did the humans' actions feel so disruptive? It was not military strength. It was something else, a different kind of power. A power that could make an enemy lay down their life for you. A power that could make your own soldiers question their orders. He thought about what would happen if the situation were reversed. If a Cathar soldier found a wounded human, the answer was simple. The human would be killed. There would be no hesitation. It was the strong thing to do, but now he was not so sure. Was it strong, or was it just easy? To destroy was easy. It required only force. To protect, especially to protect an enemy, required a strength he did not understand. It required a belief in something greater than yourself, greater than your tribe, greater than simple victory. For the first time, General Tavek considered that the Cathar Empire, for all its ships and weapons, might be the weaker species. The thought was so shocking, so heretical, that he stood up abruptly from his chair. The sound echoed in the empty command room. He had to know more. This was not just about 2 humans and a recruit. This was about something that could threaten the very foundation of everything he believed in. In the tunnel, Jin must have fallen asleep, because the next thing he knew, Su-min was gently shaking his shoulder. The world was still dark. "Your turn," she whispered. "I can't stay awake." Jin nodded and got up. His body was stiff and cold. Su-min immediately took his spot against the wall and was asleep in moments. Jin picked up his rifle and resumed his watch at the tunnel entrance. The night was quiet. The stars were hidden by smoke. He could see his breath in the cold air. After a while, he heard a soft click behind him. He turned. Kitak was awake, watching him. Jin didn't know what to do. He just looked back at the alien. Kitak gestured with its claw towards Jin's rifle, then towards the tunnel entrance. It made a questioning click. "Yeah," Jin said quietly. "I'm watching, for them. And for you, I guess." Kitak seemed to understand the tone, if not the words. It was quiet for a moment. Then it did something strange. It tapped its own chest with its claw, then pointed at Jin. Then it made a soft humming click. It was the same sound it had made for Su-min's food. Jin stared. He didn't know what to say. Was it thanking him? After he had been ready to shoot it just a few hours ago? He gave a small awkward nod. "You're welcome," he said, feeling foolish. He turned back to his watch, but the interaction stayed with him. The enemy was thanking him. The world had turned upside down. A few hours later, the sky began to lighten from black to a dull gray. Dawn was coming. Jin knew they had to move. They couldn't stay in the tunnel forever. He woke Su-min. "It's almost morning. We need to go." Su-min rubbed her eyes and looked at Kitak. "What about him?" Jin took a deep breath. He had been thinking about this during his watch. He walked over to the heavy metal beam that pinned Kitak's leg. He put his rifle down and pushed against it with all his strength. "It didn't move at all. It's no use," he grunted. "We can't move this. We don't have the tools." Kitak watched them, understanding dawning in its eyes. It knew what this meant. They were going to leave. It would be alone again. It let out a low, sad click. Su-min's heart broke. "We can't just leave him, Jin. We can't." "What choice do we have?" Jin asked, his voice desperate. "We can't carry him. He'll slow us down. We'll all die." "There has to be a way," Su-min insisted. She looked around the tunnel as if an answer would appear. Jin looked at Kitak. He saw the fear and resignation in its posture. He thought about the thank you click. He thought about the patrol that had left. He made a decision. It was probably a stupid one, but it felt like the only one he could live with. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "New plan. We don't leave him." Su-min looked at him, surprised. "What?" "We find a way to get him out," Jin said. "There must be something we can use as a lever. A long, strong piece of metal. We can try to lift the beam just enough for him to pull his leg out." Hope flickered in Su-min's eyes. "His leg is crushed, Jin. He might not be able to walk." "Then we'll support him," Jin said. "But we have to try. If we leave him, we're no better than the Kithar who left him behind." He looked at Kitak. "We're going to try to get you out," he said, making lifting motions with his hands. "Understand?" Kitak looked from Jin's face to the beam. It seemed to understand. It made a determined click and nodded its head. The first rays of sunlight filtered into the tunnel. The night was over. They were all still alive, and now they had a mission. Together. The gray light of morning filled the tunnel, revealing the full extent of their hopeless situation. The metal beam that pinned Kitak was massive, a thick piece of machinery that must have weighed more than a small vehicle. Jin walked the length of the tunnel, his eyes scanning the rubble. He was looking for a lever, a long, strong piece of rebar or a pipe. Su-min checked Kitak's bandage. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but the leg was a mess. The carapace was shattered, and the limb beneath was bent at a terrible angle. "Even if we get him free, he won't be able to walk on this," she said softly to Jin. "One problem at a time," Jin replied, his voice tight with focus. "First, we get him out. Then we figure out the rest." He found a long, rusty metal pole. It was part of an old signpost. He dragged it over. It was heavy, but it felt strong. He wedged one end under the main beam, near where it pressed on Kitak's leg. He found a flat piece of broken concrete to use as a fulcrum. "This might not work," he warned, positioning the pole. "And if it does, it's going to hurt him." "A lot." Kitak watched him, its body tense. It understood the plan. It gave a sharp, single click. It was ready. Jin looked at Su-min. You need to be ready to pull him out the second it lifts. It will only be for a moment. Su-min nodded and positioned herself by Ki-tak's shoulders. Jin took a deep breath. He put all his weight on the far end of the pole. He pushed down. His muscles strained. The pole bent alarmingly, creaking under the pressure. For a second, nothing happened. Then, with a loud grinding shriek of metal, the heavy beam lifted. Just an inch. Maybe 2. It was enough. Su-min grabbed Ki-tak under its arms and pulled with all her strength. The young Cathar cried out, a sharp, pained screech as its shattered leg was dragged from under the weight. The moment it was clear, Jin lost his grip. The pole snapped upward and the beam slammed back down with a ground-shaking thud. The noise echoed through the tunnel like a gunshot. Jin fell to the ground, panting. Su-min was on her knees next to Ki-tak, who was clicking and hissing in agony. Its leg was free, but it was clearly useless. We did it, Su-min breathed, her hands trembling. Jin got to his feet. That sound. Every Cathar for a mile will have heard that. We have to move, now. The problem of movement was immediate. Ki-tak could not stand. It tried to push itself up on its 3 good legs, but the pain was too great. It collapsed back to the ground with a defeated whimper. Jin looked at Su-min. Without a word, they came to the same understanding. Jin slung his rifle over his back. He moved to one side of Ki-tak and Su-min moved to the other. Okay, Jin said to the alien. We're going to help you. You have to help us too. Understand? Ki-tak looked at them, its eyes wide with pain and surprise. It nodded. They looped Ki-tak's upper arms over their shoulders. With a grunt of effort, they lifted. The Cathar was heavier than it looked. Its hard shell was awkward to hold, but together they managed to get it upright, its one good leg taking a little weight, its broken leg dangling. Where do we go? Su-min asked, her voice strained from the effort. Jin thought fast. The tunnel was a death trap now. They had to get out. There was a medical outpost, about 2 kilometers east of here. It was probably overrun, but the building might still be standing. It would have supplies, maybe even a working radio. It was a slim hope, but it was all they had. They started moving, a slow, shuffling 3-being procession. They moved out of the tunnel and into the ruins of the city. The morning air was cold and biting. The landscape was a nightmare of shattered concrete and twisted metal. There was no sign of life, every step was a struggle. Ki-tak tried its best to hop, but its weight was immense. After only 100 meters, Jin and Su-min were sweating and breathing heavily. They had to stop frequently to rest. Ki-tak made soft, apologetic clicks each time they paused. It's okay, Su-min would gasp. We're okay. Jin didn't say anything. He just scanned the ruins, his eyes constantly moving, his rifle now held awkwardly in one hand. He was sure they were being watched. That loud noise in the tunnel was a beacon. On the command deck, General Tavek had seen it all. The drone had tracked them leaving the tunnel. He watched the 2 humans, struggling under the weight of the Cathar soldier, moving at a snail's pace through the ruins. They were completely vulnerable. He could have a patrol there in minutes. He could end this strange experiment. He could reassert the natural order, but he didn't. He was captivated. He watched the humans stumble and stop, then get up and keep going. He saw the way they supported the wounded soldier between them. He saw the determination in their slow, painful progress. This was not a tactical maneuver. This was not a trick. This was a raw physical display of the very principle he was trying to understand. Commitment to another life, even at the cost of your own safety. He opened a channel. Dispatch a patrol to their general area. A different one. Tell them to observe only. Do not engage. I want to see how far they will go. After what felt like an hour, they had only covered half a kilometer. Jin's arms were on fire. Su-min's face was pale with exhaustion. They stopped behind the shell of a burned-out ground car. We can't make it, Jin said, his voice flat. It's too far. We're too slow. We have to, Su-min said. But her voice lacked conviction. Ki-tak looked from one to the other. It understood their words. It saw their exhaustion. It made a series of decisive clicks. It started to pull its arms away, trying to lower itself to the ground. It was telling them to leave it. No, Su-min said, holding on tighter. We're not leaving you. Ki-tak insisted, its clicks becoming more forceful. It pointed ahead, then back at itself, then made a cutting motion with its claw. Go. Leave me. Jin looked at the desperate alien. He saw its sacrifice. It was willing to be left behind to save them. It was the same choice Su-min had made back in the tunnel. but in reverse. A strange feeling washed over Jin. It was a clarity. This was no longer a human and two aliens. They were just three beings trying to survive. The lines between enemy and friend had blurred into nothing. "We started this together," Jin said, looking straight into Kitak's multifaceted eyes. "We finish it together." He adjusted his grip on Kitak's arm. "Sumin, let's go. One step at a time." They lifted him again and continued their slow, painful journey. The medical outpost was just a shape on the horizon now. A small, squat building with a collapsed roof. It seemed a million miles away. As they moved, Jin noticed something. He saw a flash of movement between two faraway buildings. He stopped, pulling Sumin and Kitak to a halt. "What is it?" Sumin asked. "Patrol," Jin whispered, his heart sinking. "I saw them. They're shadowing us." Sumin's hope vanished. "This is it then." But the patrol did not approach. They stayed at a distance, just watching. It was the same as in the tunnel. They were being observed but not attacked. "Why?" Sumin breathed. "Why are they just watching?" "I don't know," Jin said, a cold dread filling him. "But I don't like it. It feels like a game." Fueled by a new kind of fear, they pushed on. Their progress was still slow, but now it was filled with a nervous energy. The watching eyes were a constant pressure. Finally, after another grueling hour, they reached the medical outpost. The door was broken, hanging from one hinge. Inside was a scene of destruction. Overturned cots, broken equipment, and dark stains on the floor. But it was shelter. They half-carried, half-dragged Kitak inside and carefully laid him on a less dirty cot. Sumin immediately started searching the cabinets for any supplies that were left behind. Jin stood by the door, watching for the patrol. He expected them to rush the building at any moment, but nothing happened. The ruins outside were silent and still. Sumin found a sealed box of bandages and a bottle of disinfectant. It was something. She also found a small emergency radio. Her hand shook as she turned it on. There was only static, no signal. Their hope for rescue faded. "It's just us," she said, her shoulders slumping. Jin finally turned from the door. He looked at Kitak lying on the cot, and at Sumin kneeling beside it, trying to make a better bandage. He looked at his own dirty, tired hands. They were trapped. They were exhausted. They had no food, little water, and no way to call for help. The enemy was outside watching, but they were alive, and they were together. For now, that had to be enough. The silence in the ruined medical outpost was heavy. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of sunlight coming through a hole in the roof. Jin stood by the broken door, his body aching, his mind racing. The patrol was still out there. He could feel them. Sumin finished cleaning and rebandaging Kitak's leg. The young Cathar was resting, its clicking breath soft and regular. It watched her with its dark eyes, a quiet trust replacing the earlier fear. "What are they waiting for?" Sumin whispered, joining Jin by the door. "I don't know," Jin said. "Maybe for us to make a mistake. Maybe for orders." He looked at her tired face. "Or maybe they're just curious." "Curious about what?" "About us," Jin said, gesturing to the three of them in the room. "About this. None of this makes sense to them." He was right. From the Cathar point of view, this was a puzzle with no solution. Two predators were protecting wounded prey. It defied all their logic. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. They shared the last of their water, giving a small amount to Kitak as well. The static from the radio was a constant, hopeless sound. Then a new sound joined the static. A low, deep hum that grew steadily louder. It was not the sound of foot soldiers. This was the sound of an engine. A large, heavy vehicle. Jin peered cautiously through a crack in the wall. His blood ran cold. A Cathar armored transport was moving slowly down the ruined street towards them. It was bigger than a patrol. "This was a serious force, Sumin," he said, his voice tight. "They're here. For real this time." Sumin's face went pale. She moved instinctively to stand between the door and Kitak's cot. The transport stopped directly outside the outpost. The side door slid open with a hiss. 4 large Cathar soldiers jumped out, their weapons ready. They took up positions surrounding the building. Then a 5th figure emerged. It was taller, its carapace adorned with markings of rank. It was General Tavek. He had come down from his ship. He had to see this for himself. Jin raised his rifle, aiming it at the doorway. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. This was the end. There was no fighting this. General Tavek walked towards the broken door. He did not draw a weapon. He simply stood there, his large, dark eyes taking in the scene. He saw the human male Jin ready to fight. He saw the human female Sumin standing protectively. He saw his wounded soldier Kitak on the cot behind them. The general stepped through the doorway. Jin's finger tightened on the trigger. "That's far enough." General Tavek stopped. He looked at Jin, then at the rifle. He made a low, dismissive click. He was not afraid. He knew the human would not shoot. Not while he was unarmed. It was part of their weakness. His eyes then fell on Sumin. He remembered her from the drone feed, the one who had first knelt to help, the one who had refused to move. "Why?" the general asked. His voice was a deep rumble, speaking through a translator on his armor. The word was simple, but it carried the weight of his entire confused worldview. Sumin was startled by the question. She looked at the fearsome alien general, then back at Kitak. "Why what?" she asked. "Why do you protect him?" Tavek gestured to Kitak with a sharp claw.
"He is the enemy. He is weak."
"Your actions are illogical. They are a strategic failure." "Explain this." Jin kept his rifle aimed, but he listened. This was not what he had expected. Sumin took a small step forward. He was hurt. He was alone. "We could help." "So we did." "That is no reason," the general stated. "A weak soldier slows you down. Endangers you. You should have left him. Or killed him." "That is strength, is it?" Sumin asked, her voice growing stronger. "What kind of strength is it to abandon someone who needs help? What kind of strength is it to only care about yourself?" "That is the strength of the Cathar Empire," Tavek said, his chest swelling with pride. "The individual is nothing. The empire is everything. The weak are removed so the strong may thrive." "And look where it's gotten you," Jin spoke up, his eyes locked on the general. "You have a big empire. You have powerful ships. But you had to come all the way down here to ask two weak humans a question you can't answer. What does that make you?" General Tavek was silent. The human's words struck a nerve. He had all the power here. He could destroy them in an instant. Yet he was the one who felt off balance. He was the one seeking answers. He looked at Kitak. The young soldier was watching the exchange, its body tense. "Recruit," the general said, his translator clicking. "You were left behind. Your unit considered you a loss. Why did you not fight these humans? Why did you accept their aid?" Kitak was silent for a moment. Then it spoke, its clicks and whistles being translated. "They were not my enemy, General." Kitak's translated voice was young and earnest. "The enemy was the one who left me to die. These humans, they saw I was alive. They saw I was in pain. They called me by my name. They shared their food. They fought your patrol to protect me. They carried me when they could barely walk themselves." It gestured to Jin and Sumin. "They are my unit now." The words hung in the dusty air. Jin slowly lowered his rifle. He looked at Kitak, seeing not an alien, but a friend. General Tavek stood perfectly still. The recruit's words were the final piece of the puzzle. This was not just human sentimentality. It was a force that could create loyalty. It could turn an enemy into an ally. It was a power his empire did not possess and could not defeat with weapons. He had thought humans were weak because they cared. He now saw that their capacity to care was their greatest, most terrifying strength, a strength that could not be bombed or blasted away. He turned his gaze back to Sumin and Jin. He saw the dirt on their faces, the exhaustion in their eyes, and the unbreakable resolve in their posture. He made a decision. He turned and walked back to the doorway. He signaled to his soldiers outside. They lowered their weapons and boarded the transport. The general looked back one last time. "The Cathar Empire is withdrawing from this world," he announced, his voice devoid of its earlier arrogance. "The pacification of Viridia is ended." Jin and Sumin stared, unable to believe what they were hearing. "Why?" Jin asked, echoing the general's own question. "Because we cannot win this war," General Tavek said simply. "We can destroy your worlds, but we cannot defeat your people. To fight you is to become like you. And my empire is not ready for that kind of strength." He looked at Kitak. "The recruit stays with you. He has chosen his unit." Without another word, General Tavek turned and walked to the transport. The door hissed shut. The engine hummed to life and the vehicle drove away, disappearing into the ruins. Silence returned to the outpost. The static from the radio suddenly crackled, and then a clear human voice broke through. "Any survivors, this is UED Command. We are detecting a full Cathar withdrawal. I repeat, The Cathar fleet is leaving the system. If you can hear this, signal your position. Jin and Sumin looked at each other, then at the radio, then at Kitak. The war was over. They had survived. They had won not by fighting, but by protecting. They had shown an enemy general that true strength was not in destroying your enemies, but in having the courage to protect them. Sumin walked over to the radio and picked up the microphone. Her hand was steady. "This is Sumin," she said, her voice clear. "We are here. We have a survivor. Actually, we have two." She looked at Jin and Kitak and smiled. "We have three.